Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. Today, we're going to paint a pretty simple scene, a beautiful Texas sky. So even though this reference is landscape, I'm going to be taking the sun and visually moving it over so I can paint more of a portrait-oriented vertical painting. So just keep that in mind as you're watching this, that I am mentally moving the sun over. I hope you enjoy. So this is just a piece of UArt, sanded paper. This paper just always works for me, and I have a huge roll of it. This is actually, yeah, it is. It's 9 by 12. It's exactly 9 by 12. Sometimes I'll cut them a little bit bigger, like a 10 by 13, and that way the tape that I use, it won't prevent me from framing it to a 9 by 12. If you cut exactly a 9 by 12 and then tape it like that, then you're gonna have a border around your painting that doesn't have pastel on it. You can also tape it this size, and then you can crop it in again to an 8 by 10. It just kind of depends. So I kind of like to go bigger and work my way inwards, and so that just works really well. If you have a mounted board, you don't attach it like this, and so that's a little different method. What I'm gonna do is I always start off, and of course, you know, my hands are already messy. I've been touching pastels. There's some on this paper. You can see it's kind of smeary, but everything is so forgiving with this sanded paper. Of course, if you're using flat paper, it's a little different. The first thing you'll notice is how low my horizon line is, and I love that because I love the drama. This creates such drama with the expanse of the sky. I would never want to center my horizon line because then your viewer can't tell what is the focal point of this painting. If your land and your sky are equal in size, the viewer doesn't know what is the most important thing. And in my painting, the sky is. That's what we're going to focus on, is this beautiful sky with this gorgeous array of colors. And so the first mark that I always make is my low horizon line. And I am not too precious about this. I just gesture across. This is just a mechanical pencil. I love it because it stays sharp, you know, because using pencil on sanded paper constantly wears down the lead. And so this is just a fast way for me in my studio to just always have a sharp line. You can see I'm just multiple lines. It's just gesturing across. I mean, really, in a painting like this, that's about the only line I would make because we don't have a major shape. Yes, we have these clouds, but in this painting, I'm actually going to put those in towards the end. We're going to work slowly on the colors in the sky, and then we'll work on the land, and then we'll work on the clouds. Okay, so really the only line you need to be making is your low horizon line. But we're really going to, in this case, I'm going to apply color from the horizon line up, and I'm going to really be careful about what I'm choosing, because you'll notice in the reference photo how cool the light is up here and how it gradually gets warmer and warmer and warmer until we're at the base where the sun is, right? And so that's exactly how I'm going to apply my underpainting. I'm going to apply very warm colors at the base, and you'll notice how light I am. Very lightly scumbling this over the entire, this is a Terry Ludwig, kind of a warm peachy color. I'm also going to be using a Great American color. I believe this one is called Marigold. But there's a switch that happens where the light instantly gets cooler. And so how I like to get that effect is I actually move to a purple, because purple is a warm cool. It has red in it. And this is another Great American called Cindy Winkle. They have the greatest names with the Great American. And it is so vibrant and just a great color as a base. So then you can layer things over it. So this is, you know, this is something that I have discovered through lots of practice and what colors look good in the skies against each other. And these peaches and this kind of mauve-y purple look really beautiful as when they vibrate like next to each other. Okay, the next thing I'm going to use is actually turquoise. I'm going more towards those blues. Now you'll notice right now it's very striped. I'm just kind of going up. Some things are cooler, like this, or lighter in value. This is a lighter value than this. But we're going to be scumbling lots of color. This is just kind of the first layers of what we're doing. And so this is when I tell my students to use the lightest touch. Use a very, very, very light touch. If you look very closely on your screen, you can see that you can still see the paper through these scumbles, right? You can see it shining through. I'm not pushing hard. I am using the lightest touch because I want there to be transparency, and I want to retain the tooth because I'm going to keep applying pastel on these colors. This is really just toning the paper. I'm doing more of a local color and dry underpainting. This is a local color underpainting, meaning I wanted to kind of stain my paper and support with these colors. Now I'm taking that little piece of pipe foam and I'm going to just push this in. Really what I'm doing is I'm pushing this pastel into the paper because I want there to be a ton of tooth. You know, you've seen there are lots of artists that do sky paintings that they use their hand and they go across. I actually like to kind of go down because it helps blend the two different hues into each other. Okay. And this one I really love, this pipe foam on the side that it's actually really light colored. Sometimes that black pipe foam that we all use sticks, but this is a lighter colored one, so it's not so bad. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to work from down or up the top of the painting down. And I'm going to use some of the same colors. And so one thing about here, I'm gonna turn the camera. One thing about pastels is we have such an advantage because we can make so many different marks. It's not all about blending. And so we want to really showcase and highlight the marks and the effects we can get with scumbling, especially in a sky. And so that's what I'm going to focus on today is scumbling. And one way that I love to scumble colors together is to use different color temperatures of the same hue. And so like this cerulean blue next to, say, this ultramarine blue. And so we are actually going to scumble those together, also using a very light touch. Instead, though, of going across like I was, I'm going to be making more X-like patterns, leaving gaps, okay? I'm going to leave some gaps. I'm not trying to cover every little inch, okay? And yes, this is quite a bit darker, but we need to get darker because the sky is darker. That first pass was just toning the paper. And you can see that I'm using just short marks that's about a third of the way down. And then I'm going to take that same blue that I used and I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to fill in the areas that I kind of left. I left some areas open of that ultramarine. That's about good for now. Now I'm going to move to a slightly lighter cobalt blue right here, which is mirror the value of what I want for it to be as I'm working my way down. But I'm also going to work that color a little bit up into the upper areas of the sky just to blend them so I don't have stripes. I don't want stripes in my skies, okay? Now remember, I'm making big chunky marks here. I'm not trying to be real tight. Don't be tight. Work from your shoulder. A lot of times people work from their wrist, which makes them tight. Work from your arm, work for your whole arm, work from your elbow, and that will help you. I'm standing, which also helps me. For those of you who can't stand, I totally understand. Have some space between you and your work. Don't be like this close to it. All of those things make for tighter paintings. Okay, moving to a Richardson. This is a turquoise, and I'm putting it over that gorgeous Cindy Winkle color. But then once again, I'm also working it up into that bluer area. I'm also going to step back every now and then to make sure what I'm doing looks good. I actually am standing closer to the easel than I normally do because the camera easel is where I'm standing, and so I'm kind of to the side, which makes it a little difficult, but it's nothing I can't work with. Okay, so now what I did, so you'll see that Cindy Winkle, I pulled it up into, and I am using the lightest touch. If I was marking on my hand, I'm going to show you my hand. That's how much pastel is on my finger. That's as light as I'm touching the paper. If I was pushing really hard, it would look like that. Do you see the difference? And so I'm using a very, very light touch. Okay, so I'm pulling that up because when you're using that light touch, those pastel colors start to glaze over. You're not making mud because you're allowing the other colors to peek through. Go back up with that ultramarine. When I back up, I can see areas that I want to change a little bit. In this sky, it doesn't have clouds way up in the sky, but there's not like a soft wispy effects going up into the sky. And every now and then, in areas that you want to really cover some tooth, you can push harder. Okay? Use a soft, soft, soft touch. I can't stress it enough. That's the key to having a lot of transparency in your work. You see, I haven't done any blending. Now I could, if I wanted to, I could go back in, and if I was going to blend, I would want to do like the edges a little bit. And I'm flicking the same way that I was painting on my hand, showing you this light touch. That's also how lightly I'm using the this foam. Very, very lightly, just enough to push or pull. I'm using it like this. You see that? Like a lightest touch. I'm not trying to push and blend. Just wanting to show, or maybe just help cover a little bit of, you know, the grainy areas if I didn't want that to show, while still maintaining that translucency. So now we're going to keep working our way down. I'm going to apply still some more of this mauve. And so I'm pulling that Cindy Winkle down just slightly, and you can see that pretty glow that it achieves, especially over this gold. But I am going to start to put in some of this gold too. When this is the same, this is the same color that I put at the very beginning, but I do want to kind of mix a little bit, so I like to go back over it to achieve kind of that same result of just that scumbled color. You can just really see how that creates this really soft, really pretty effect. Now, of course, I could bring some blues down into here using a very light touch. This is a more cobalt. Really just makes that sky look gorgeous. Okay. Sometimes on the edges of clouds, I like to, I will go on the edge of that mark and I'll pull straight down just so it's not so hard, especially if I'm wanting it to be really, really soft. And so I love this color. This is a new pastel and I do not know what number it is. I could try to find it. And I'm just going to loosely put in that color at the bottom of this, of the gold. Once again, taking out my little pipe foam. I'm going to push it into the paper. Now that part of the painting I was pushing. I'm pushing down harder there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move to the ground because I feel like I need this as a foil. I need the darkness to combat this light. And so I'm going to use my ruler. It's the easiest way to get a straight line. And I'm just going to go straight across to create that horizon line. If I get off a little bit, I can always readjust. Now remember, when you're using a ruler, you have to be actually a little bit below the mark you're making because there's thickness to the ruler. Of course, I have to be really careful here. Pull this down. Be really careful here not to accidentally skip and pull it up into the sky. But once again, I didn't want to use a wet underpainting because I wanted to show you guys how to have flatter papers, how to kind of get the same result. I'm going to be really careful at the top. If you fudge it, it's okay because we have a lot of tooth around on the paper right there, and so we can always go back and readjust, okay? And so this is where I live. It is this flat, 360 degrees if I'm standing in a field. But we have these skies, and so I can't complain. I am going to go back over that line just to soften it a little bit because it pushes it back, it makes it recede a little. If it's really hard, then it pulls the eye a little bit too much. And I want the hard lines to be where the sun is and also where the rows in the field are. Okay. So just adding that color really makes the sky come alive, doesn't it? It's just that's why I just love the darker, I love the darker base. I could go back in. And this is where, you know, if you really wanted to straighten out your horizon line, you could gently, you know, if you accidentally pulled some of that dark color up, this is where you could fix that. I'm just kind of wanting to, I want to put, this is a bright pink, this is a unison, this is a lighter pink, and I'm going to start to work my way over to where I want to put the sun. Now I want this area to have a lot of tooth left because that achieving the effect of a really, really bright spot of light, you really need a lot of tooth because you need to be able to lay whatever brightest color is thickly and pretty pure pastel, like not scumbling. You're going to push pretty hard. And so I need that pastel to really stick. Now this area above the sun is going to be really bright yellow. This one's a little bit more of a pure tone. Okay, you'll notice I'm not doing the center of the sun yet because I really want that part to be pretty free of pastel. Now I'm going to pull in some orange. That really bright orange just at the very base. If any of you have seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, they filmed a lot of that, especially when they ride off into the sunset. And they actually film that a lot here because it's so flat, you can see people ride off for a really long time. And so they filmed that here in Amarillo. Now, I don't want to go all the way over with the color. I want to really try to just contain the viewer in that area. And so I'm not going all the way to the left with my sunset colors. These are the colors. If you can see that, they're really, really neutral. This one is pinker, this one is kind of a gray purple. And so I'm using the side, holding it between my thumb and my 2 forefingers. I'm going to use the side and I'm just going to wiggle a soft cloud, trying to kind of emulate the shapes of these clouds. They're very thin because they're really far away and they're way up high in the sky. Okay, so there's a cloud. So I like this, but I want to soften it and push it a little bit more into the sky. So I'm going to take my pinky, make sure your pinky's clean before you do that. And I'm just going to tap it. I'm not rubbing it. I'm tapping those edges to smooth it out, pushing it more into the paper. Now I'm going to take the other one that's the more mauve, and you'll notice in the reference photo, as this cloud gets closer to the sun, it gets warmer. And so using this warmer color, I'm going to put that pastel on this leading edge, the edge that's closest to the sun. You can also go in, so this darker area here, you'll notice that there are clouds even further off. You can use this darker area in a lighter pastel and create a line, which basically negatively creates that cloud form. So you'll notice, of course, we have perspective in this picture. You can see the rows as they're going out towards us, and they're at an angle. There's a little farm that's back there in the distance that we can add here in a minute. But the easiest way to get that look is to take your ruler. I like to take a pencil, especially in the beginning, because it's easier to manipulate the pencil. Okay, so I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm going to pick an area, probably this third, because I'm going to put the sun over here. I'm going to pick an area that I want to be, for that to be the perspective that I'm using. And if you watch the other sunset video I have, I think that was one of my first Patreon videos about the sunset with the road. This is kind of the same thing, to where you're going to use the ruler, use your pencil, and instead of drawing a line, especially in a field like this, you can see that the line is very broken. I'm just going to kind of skip along, wiggle. Can you see that? It's kind of lower, isn't it? I'm going to kind of just skip along and create kind of a broken line. It's very small right now. And then I'm going to use that same angle. So I'm going to basically just turn my ruler just slightly to make another one, using the same point of perspective. If you get off, it's okay, because we have lots of tooth down here, because I just, I put that dark pastel in, and then I just pushed it in a little bit with my foam. So I'm going to just gradually get farther and farther away. You know, I'm not going to make nearly as many rows as are in this picture, because it's really, I mean, it's a detail area that adds interest to your foreground, but it's not the most important thing. You know, the shining star of this piece is the sky, but it's complemented by the land. Okay, so you can see I basically just made some very basic lines, but that they're all pointing in the same direction. Now I used a Carbothello, this is color 105. Well, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in with my softer pastels that I used in the sky, so this peachy Great American, and I'm going to work on some thicker marks because that's what's in the reference photo. Now, whenever I was first doing this yesterday, I didn't really, that's, you know, one reason why I did the two paintings is I didn't really like the effect I got. And I realized whenever I was working on it, it's because I wasn't following the laws of nature. In that, the areas that there would be water would be lower. They would be dug out. The areas that are higher are more mounded. I was using more straight marks and I didn't think the effect was quite accurate. And so whenever I am painting, whenever you're making marks on the landscape, mark in the direction of what it is you're painting. And so in this case, I'm actually going to be making marks in a U formation, just a very slight U, okay? Because I want it to look lower. This is a flooded field. Just going to add some hints of color in here. Now I'm going to go back in a second and fix these rows. Really, these first marks are kind of more of just a guideline, and then I'm going to go back in and fine tune. I'm going to go back in. I'm actually just going to go at the same area. Well, you know, you can do it either way. You can make the marks. In this case, I'm actually going to go back in. Just going to kind of reiterate those rows. And in this case, I'm making almost upside down U's because I want to indicate that those rows, areas of them, are a little higher. You can even go over. You can, you know, really fine tune. Also slightly darkens. This is just a warm brown compared to that warm green that I had earlier. Can you see that? I hope you guys can see all that. Trying not to get my head in the way. You know, the pencil also works kind of as a blender. It can kind of push things around a little bit. And if you wanted to draw some little houses in the distance or trees, just right on the edge, just because I have a lot of tooth down there, can create some really small trees. Sometimes I like to add those because it kind of adds some scale to the piece. So that looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the final touches of gold to the sky and the very lightest light. So this is actually a Townsend. It's not a pure white. This is a burnt sienna Townsend, but it's a very light color and I love how thickly it goes on. This is a Turquoise pastel. And I also just like the chunky marks that it makes. So sometimes I'm just going to push it on just like that to create my sun. I have to get really close here. Sorry, I don't want to block it. And I don't really try to do a make it round. I like just that push of a mark. It's very impressionistic. And then of course, there's some really bright yellow coming off of the sun. Even up here in the sky a little bit. Hi everybody, it's Bethany and I'm here in my studio. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you learned something today, I would love it if you would give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and also click that little notification bell so you can know whenever I have a new video coming up. If you'd also love to support this content coming out, I would love it if you would consider visiting my Patreon page. The link is below. I'm so excited to be bringing these lessons to you weekly, and I hope you're excited too. Bye.